Blood pooled beneath Commander Velox like spilled wine on pristine marble, each drop a testament to the carnage that had transformed Kepler Station from a thriving mining hub into a graveyard. The metallic taste of copper filled the recycled air as he dragged his broken body across debris-strewn corridors, leaving a crimson trail that told the story of humanity's newest nightmare just 12 hours ago. He'd been reviewing quarterly mining reports over synthetic coffee, complaining about the bitter taste. Funny how perspective changes when death comes knocking at your door with a battering ram made of plasma cannons and pure hatred. The Reaper Legion had struck without warning, as they always did. Their crimson warships had emerged from hyperspace, like demons materializing from hell itself, blocking out the system's twin suns with their massive hulls. Velox had watched through the command center's reinforced windows as his defensive fleet 60 ships that had seemed so formidable just moments before were systematically torn apart, like paper dolls in a hurricane. The screams still echoed in his mind, not just the dying wails of his pilots, but the terrified cries of 10,000 civilians trapped in the station's lower levels. Families who had come here seeking better lives, mining precious crystals from the asteroid belt, building dreams in the cold vacuum of space. Now they huddled in emergency shelters while Reaper boarding parties hunted them like animals. His violet hands, a mark of his Altarian heritage, trembled as he reached for the emergency beacon. The device seemed impossibly heavy, though it weighed no more than a child's toy. 3 of his fingers were broken, bent at angles that made his stomach lurch, but he forced them to work. The beacon represented their only hope, a desperate message cast into the cosmic dark. Would anyone even hear it? The galaxy was vast, and most civilized species had learned to ignore distress calls from this sector. The Reaper Legion had made sure of that over the past 5 decades, turning rescue attempts into elaborate traps that only fed their growing armada. This is ... double quotes, his voice cracked like autumn leaves. He swallowed hard, tasting blood. This is Kepler Mining Station, Sector 7. We are under attack by Reaper forces. Our defensive fleet has been destroyed. Repeat, our fleet is gone. We have 10,000 civilians trapped with nowhere to run. Our shields are failing. Anyone who receives this transmission, please. We need immediate assistance. We're not asking for much. Just ... please don't let us die forgotten out here. The beacon pulsed once, twice, then went silent. The message was away, racing through hyperspace at the speed of hope and desperation. Velox closed his eyes and waited for death to find him, listening to the distant sounds of laser fire and screaming metal as the Reapers continued their methodical butchery. But sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of humor. The response came within hours, faster than should have been possible across such distances. A clear, strong voice cut through the static, like a sword through silk, speaking in accented standard Galactic that Velox didn't immediately recognize. Commander Velox, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy, 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We have received your SOS transmission and confirmed your situation through long-range reconnaissance. I want you to listen to me very carefully. The cavalry is coming. Hold your position, protect your people, and stay alive. We'll handle the rest. Earth Navy. Velox had never heard of such an organization. His species maintained extensive databases of galactic military forces, trade organizations, and political entities. Earth wasn't listed anywhere in their records. Where had these people come from? More importantly, why did Captain Morrison sound so confident? The Reaper Legion commanded over 2,000 warships, each one a masterpiece of destructive engineering. What kind of force could possibly challenge such overwhelming odds? The answer came 3 days later, and it rewrote everything Velox thought he knew about the nature of power in the galaxy. He was manning the auxiliary sensor station when space itself seemed to tear open. The hyperspace emergence signatures were unlike anything in his experience, not the gentle ripples produced by civilian vessels. or even the sharp cuts made by military craft. This was something else entirely. Space screamed as reality bent around massive objects dropping out of faster-than-light travel with the subtlety of falling mountains. "Sir," whispered his communications officer, a young Centaurian female whose blue skin had gone pale with shock. "Sir, you need to see this." The tactical display flickered to life, showing sensor readings that couldn't possibly be accurate. 800 distinct contacts, each one measuring over a kilometer in length. The computer kept recalibrating, trying to make sense of data that defied conventional understanding of naval architecture. These weren't ships, they were floating cities of destruction. Each vessel bristled with weapon arrays that looked like they could crack planets. Energy signatures pulsed through their hulls like the heartbeats of metal gods. Power readings that made their own fusion reactors look like birthday candles in comparison. "Sweet mother of stars," whispered his communications officer, unconsciously echoing his own thoughts. "What have we summoned?" The lead vessel identified itself as the UES Retribution, a name that sent chills down Velox's spine. Its hull gleamed like polished obsidian, marked with symbols that looked vaguely predatory even though he couldn't read the alien script. Weapon ports lined its sides like the eyes of a spider, each one large enough to swallow a fighter craft whole. But it was the formation that truly terrified him. 800 ships moving in perfect synchronization. Their positioning so precise it suggested a level of military discipline that bordered on the supernatural. This wasn't just a fleet, it was an instrument of absolute annihilation, wielded by beings who understood warfare on a level that most species couldn't even comprehend. The Reaper ships around Kepler Station suddenly seemed very small and very fragile. Admiral Rebecca Stone's voice filled the command center, transmitted on an open frequency that every ship in the system could hear. Her tone was conversational, almost friendly, but underneath lay something that made Velox's survival instincts scream warnings. "Attention Reaper vessels. This is Admiral Stone of the Terran Defense Force. You have exactly 60 seconds to withdraw from this system and release all prisoners. Failure to comply will result in your immediate and permanent removal from the galaxy. This is your only warning. 60 seconds. Against 2,000 ships. Either these humans were completely insane, or they knew something about warfare that the rest of the galaxy had somehow missed. The Reaper response was predictable mocking laughter mixed with threats of torture and death. They had never retreated from any engagement, never shown mercy to any enemy. Why should a handful of unknown aliens change that record? Velox found himself holding his breath as the countdown timer on his display ticked toward 0. Around him, his surviving crew members stood frozen, watching the tactical display like spectators at their own execution. The air recyclers hummed softly in the background, a mundane sound that somehow made everything feel more surreal. 59 seconds. 58, 50-7. What kind of beings were these humans? And what exactly had his desperate plea for help just unleashed upon the galaxy? Captain Mordok, the flesh render, stood 7 feet tall in his battle armor, a walking nightmare of cybernetic enhancements and scarred flesh that had terrorized civilized space for half a century. His Crimson command ship, the Blood Harvest, had witnessed the destruction of over 300 worlds, each conquest adding another layer of trophy skulls to its corridors. Today, he expected to add a new species to his collection. The Reaper Legion wasn't just another pirate organization, they were a plague that had infected this entire arm of the galaxy. For 50 years, their Crimson Fleet had swept through star systems like a cosmic wildfire, leaving only ash and screaming survivors in their wake. They didn't just raid for resources or territory. They harvested sentient beings like crops, turning children into drugged shock troops and parents into protein paste for their food synthesizers. Mordak's cybernetic I-word as it focused on the tactical display, counting the human ships that had just materialized from hyperspace. 800 vessels arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like polished steel in the light of distant stars. Impressive, certainly, but numbers alone had never intimidated the fleshringer. 800 ships against our 2,000. His laughter was a mechanical rasp that made his bridge crew flinch. The sound came from a voice box grafted into his throat after a Zephyrian slave had tried to crush his windpipe 20 years ago. He'd kept the slave alive for months afterward, using him as a living example of what happened to those who resisted. These soft mammals think superior numbers will save their precious mining colony. But here's the thing about apex predators: they don't always recognize each other at first glance. His tactical officer, a pale creature whose species had been extinct for a decade except for the few specimens Mordok kept as pets, trembled as he delivered his report. "Captain, their energy signatures are ... unusual. I'm reading power outputs that exceed theoretical maximums for vessels of that size." Mordok backhanded the officer casually, sending him sprawling across the deck. "Theoretical maximums are for species without imagination. Today we feast on human flesh and add their ship hulls to our collection." He activated the fleet-wide communication system, his image appearing on the command screens of 2,000 warships. Each vessel was a testament to engineered brutality, their hulls painted crimson with the blood of entire civilizations. Gun ports bristled along their sides like infected wounds, weapon systems designed not just to kill but to maximize suffering. "Warriors of the Legion," Mordak's voice boomed across the void. "Before us lies a new species, ripe for harvesting. Their children will serve in our assault battalions. Their adults will feed our bioprocessors. Their worlds will burn as monuments to our glory." The response was immediate, a chorus of battle cries in a dozen alien languages, the sound of predators scenting fresh prey. Mordok felt the familiar surge of anticipation that came before each slaughter. Soon, he would walk the corridors of human ships, selecting the strongest specimens for his breeding programs and the most intelligent for his interrogation chambers. The Reaper fleet surged forward like a crimson tide of death, their formation spreading into the classic wolfpack pattern that had shattered so many defensive lines. 2,000 ships moving with the coordinated brutality of a hive mind, each captain eager to claim the first human kills. They had destroyed entire star fleets using these tactics. The Altarian Defense Force had lasted 6 hours. The Centaurian Royal Navy had managed 4. Even the legendary Iron Guard of Proxima had crumbled within a day when faced with the Legion's overwhelming numbers and complete lack of mercy. But sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted, and apex predators discover they're not quite at the top of the food chain after all. "Admiral Rebecca." Stone's voice cut across all communication frequencies, like a blade through silk, her tone carrying an authority that made even veteran Reaper captains pause. "Attention, all Reaper vessels. You have 10 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. This is your final opportunity to surrender." Mordak's laughter echoed through his ship's corridors. "Surrender to 800 ships. This human female must be suffering from atmospheric poisoning." But Stone wasn't finished. Her next transmission carried a different tone, entirely colder than the void between stars, with an undertone that suggested she was done being polite. "Very well. All Terran vessels, you are weapons free. Show these animals what happens when you threaten Earth's children." The human response was immediate and absolutely terrifying. The first volley arrived before Mordak's sensors could even track the weapon's fire. Streams of superheated plasma erupted from the human ships like the breath of metal dragons, each beam carrying enough energy to vaporize a small moon. The beams moved with impossible precision, striking Reaper vessels at weak points in their armor that shouldn't have been visible at such distances. "Impossible," Mordok snarled as his tactical display lit up with casualty reports. 50 ships destroyed in the first salvo, 50 ships that had survived countless battles, reduced to expanding clouds of ionized particles in less than 3 seconds. But the plasma cannons were just the opening act. The missile volleys came next, and they moved like nothing Mordock had ever seen. Instead of following ballistic trajectories, these weapons seemed almost alive, weaving through space like schools of predatory fish hunting in perfect coordination. They dodged defensive fire with impossible agility, split into multiple warheads when targeted, and struck with the focused fury of guided lightning bolts. "Sir," his communications officer's voice cracked with panic. "We're losing ships faster than I can count them. The humans are targeting our command vessels first, then working their way down the chain of command." Mordock watched in growing horror as his perfect formation disintegrated. These humans weren't just fighting, they were hunting with the calculated efficiency of natural-born killers. Their weapon systems seemed to anticipate Reaper movements, their targeting computers operating at speeds that defied conventional physics within 30 minutes. His 2,000-ship armada had been reduced to scattered fragments desperately trying to escape. The humans pursued with mechanical precision, their ships moving in perfect coordination as they systematically eliminated every Reaper vessel that tried to flee. "This isn't possible," Mordock screamed at his tactical display. "We are the apex predators of this galaxy. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We are death incarnate." But death, as it turned out, had just met something deadlier. The UES Vengeance materialized directly in front of his flagship, its massive bulk blocking out the stars. The human vessel was a work of art in destruction, every line of its hull designed for maximum lethality. Weapon ports opened along its sides like the eyes of some cosmic leviathan, each one glowing with barely contained energy. "Captain Mordock," Admiral Stone's voice filled his bridge, calm and conversational despite the carnage surrounding them. "I want you to understand something before you die. You've spent 50 years terrorizing innocent people, turning children into soldiers, parents into food. You thought you were the ultimate predator." The human ship's main guns began to charge, energy readings climbing 2 levels that made Mordock's instruments scream warnings. "You weren't even close," Stone continued. "Humans come from a world where everything tries to kill you from the moment you're born. We've been practicing warfare since we learned to make tools. We've turned violence into an art form and conflict resolution into a science." Mordock's cybernetic implants sparked as fear finally overrode his combat programming. For the first time in 50 years, the flesh render felt genuine terror. "Wait," he screamed into his communicator. "We can negotiate. I have resources, territory, slaves. You can." The time for negotiation ended when you decided to hunt our people. Stone's voice carried the finality of a judge's gavel. "Earth doesn't negotiate with monsters. We simply remove them." The U.S. Vengeance fired. Captain Mordock's final scream echoed across every communication frequency in the system as his flagship was reduced to its component atoms. The sound lasted exactly 2.7 seconds. Just long enough for every surviving Reaper to understand that their reign of terror had finally met its match. In the growing silence that followed, Commander Velox stared at his tactical display in absolute shock. 2,000 ships, 50 years of galactic terror, gone in 90 minutes. What exactly had his distress call awakened? The shuttle bay of the UES Retribution was larger than Commander Velox's entire command center back on Kepler Station. As his transport craft settled onto the polished deck plating, he couldn't help but notice the subtle details that spoke of a civilization built for war. The bay doors were reinforced with armor thick enough to stop planetary bombardment. The loading equipment moved with mechanical precision that suggested everything here served a military purpose, even the seemingly mundane logistics systems. But it was the crew that truly unnerved him. Human sailors moved through their duties with an efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. No wasted motions, no casual conversation, just the smooth coordination of a species that had turned warfare into an exact science. Their uniforms were pristine, despite having just concluded a battle that had reshaped the balance of power in this entire sector of the galaxy. Commander Velox, a young human officer, approached, her bearing straight as a laser beam. "Admiral, Stone is waiting for you in the war room, if you'll follow me, sir." The corridors of the human flagship told a story that made Velox's skin crawl. The walls were lined with what appeared to be battle honors, small plaques marking victories against enemies whose names he didn't recognize. How many species had learned too late what it meant to threaten human interests? How many civilizations had discovered that Earth's children didn't believe in proportional responses? And yet, there was something almost elegant about it all. The humans didn't celebrate their victories with the crude trophy displays favored by species like the Reapers. Instead, their memorials were understated, respectful, professional. They killed with the efficiency of machines, but remembered with the solemnity of beings who understood the weight of taking life. That somehow made them more terrifying than any screaming barbarian horde. The war room doors opened with a soft hiss, revealing a space that defied everything Velox thought he knew about military command centers. Holographic displays floated in the air like ghostly windows into the fabric of space itself, showing real-time tactical information from across multiple star systems. The debris field that had once been the Reaper Legion spread across the central display, like a three-dimensional constellation of destruction. Admiral Rebecca Stone stood with her back to him, studying the tactical readouts with the focused intensity of a surgeon examining a patient. She was younger than he'd expected, perhaps 40 standard years by human reckoning, but her steel-gray eyes held the weight of decisions that had shaped the destiny of worlds. "Commander Velox," she said without turning around, "thank you for accepting my invitation. I imagine you have questions." Questions? Velox almost laughed at the understatement. He had witnessed the impossible military engagement that had rewritten the fundamental laws of warfare as understood by every civilized species in the galaxy. The Reaper Legion had been a force of nature, an unstoppable plague that had consumed entire star systems, and these humans had swept them aside, like dust in a cosmic wind. "Admiral," he began, his voice trembling despite his efforts to project confidence. "Your response to our distress call was overwhelming. The Reapers were monsters. Yes, absolute nightmares that had terrorized this region for 50 years. But you didn't just defeat them. You erased them, completely, utterly, as if they had never existed." Stone finally turned to face him, and Velox felt his courage waver under the intensity of her gaze. Those gray eyes had seen things that would drive most beings to madness. The weight of command decisions that involved the lives of billions, the responsibility of wielding power that could reshape the galaxy with a single order. "Commander," she said, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "When someone hurts innocents and sends us a distress call, we don't send a proportional response. We send a permanent solution." She gestured to the tactical display, where the debris field continued to expand like a slowly blooming flower of destruction. "Those pirates won't be terrorizing anyone else, ever. Their bases have been marked for elimination. Their supply lines have been cut. Their allies have been given a simple choice: surrender, or join them in the void." But here's what really chilled Velox too. His Corsi wasn't boasting. Stone delivered these words with the same casual tone someone might use to discuss the weather or lunch plans. The complete annihilation of a galactic threat was just another day at the office for these humans. "I don't understand," Velox pressed, desperate to make sense of what he'd witnessed. "Your species isn't listed in any of our databases. We maintain extensive records of galactic military forces, trade organizations, political entities. Earth appears nowhere in our files. Where did you come from? How is this level of military capability even possible?" Stone's expression shifted slightly, and for a moment Velox glimpsed something that might have been amusement. "Commander, Your databases catalog civilized species. Earth is what happens when an apex predator species achieves spaceflight without losing its predatory instincts. She moved to another display, showing what appeared to be a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star. This is our home, a death world where everything everything is actively trying to kill you from the moment you're born. Whether systems that can level continents, geological activity that reshapes landscapes overnight, plant life that's toxic, carnivorous, or both. Animal species that hunt in coordinated packs, using tactics that would impress a military strategist. The display shifted, showing images that made Velox's violet blood run cold. Massive predators with teeth like sword blades, storms that could flatten cities, volcanic eruptions that turned day into night across entire hemispheres. Most species evolve on garden worlds, Stone continued conversationally. Peaceful environments where cooperation and harmony are survival traits. We evolved on a world that was actively hostile to life itself. Every day was a battle for survival. Every generation had to be stronger, smarter, more ruthless than the last, just to see another sunrise. She turned back to face him, and Velox realized he was looking at something far more dangerous than any Reaper pirate. The humans weren't just another spacefaring civilization. They were warfare incarnate, shaped by millions of years of evolutionary pressure into the perfect killing machines. But surely, Velox stammered, surely your civilization has moved beyond such primitive instincts. You have art, culture, philosophy, the hallmarks of enlightened beings. Stone's smile was colder than the vacuum of space. Oh, we absolutely have all those things. We write beautiful poetry about war. We compose symphonies that capture the music of battle. Our greatest philosophers spend their time developing more efficient methods of conflict resolution. The tactical display shifted, again showing fleet movements across multiple star systems. Hundreds of human ships moving with choreographed precision, their formations spelling out a message that every species in the galaxy would soon learn to read. Earth protects its own. You see, Commander, most civilizations view warfare as an unfortunate necessity, something to be avoided whenever possible. We view it as the ultimate expression of applied problem-solving. When diplomacy fails, when negotiation reaches an impasse, when bullies threaten the innocent, we don't debate endlessly about proportional responses or political ramifications. She gestured toward the debris field one more time. We solve the problem permanently. Velox felt ice crystallizing in his veins as the full implications hit him. These humans weren't just warriors, they were apex predators wearing the mask of civilization. And that mask could be discarded whenever circumstances required it. They had art and culture and philosophy, yes, but underneath lay something primal and terrifying that had been honed by millions of years of survival on a world that wanted them dead. Admiral, he whispered, what have we unleashed upon the galaxy? Stone's expression softened slightly, and for a moment she looked almost human in the way other species understood the term. Commander, you sent out a distress call. Innocent people were dying, and you asked for help. We gave it to you. The only question now is what the rest of the galaxy does with the knowledge that Earth's children are no longer content to remain isolated in our corner of space. She moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars with a contemplative air of someone making decisions that would echo across centuries. Word of this engagement will spread. Species that have spent generations terrorizing others will learn that there's something new in the galaxy, something that doesn't negotiate with monsters, doesn't believe in measured responses, doesn't accept the status quo when innocents are suffering. Velox joined her at the viewport, staring out at the infinite canvas of space. Somewhere out there, other civilizations were receiving reports of the Reaper Legion's destruction. Intelligence networks were scrambling to gather information about this new player on the galactic stage. Military planners were recalculating threat assessments and defense strategies. "What happens now?" he asked. Stone's reflection in the viewport showed a smile that would have given nightmares to the galaxy's worst criminals. "Now, Commander, the galaxy learns what it means to have Earth watching over it, and God help anyone who gives us a reason to. Take off the gloves completely." As if on cue, the communications officer's voice echoed through the war room. "Admiral, we're receiving distress calls from 17 different systems. Pirate activity, slaver raids, territorial disputes. They're all asking for the same thing: help from the humans who stopped the Reapers." Stone's smile widened. "Send the same response to all of them, Lieutenant. The cavalry is coming." Velox realized with growing horror that his single distress call hadn't just saved Kepler Station. It had awakened something that would reshape the entire galaxy, and there was no putting that particular genie back in its bottle. What had they done? The emergency session bells hadn't rung in the Galactic Council chambers for over 2 centuries. The last time had been during the End Crisis, when an extragalactic invasion fleet had threatened to consume 3 entire spiral arms. Today, representatives from 47 different species sat in their ceremonial seats, their various forms of perspiration creating a symphony of fear that the chamber's atmospheric processors struggled to handle. At the center of the vast circular chamber, holographic displays flickered with intelligence reports that read like science fiction written by a madman. Ship classifications that exceeded known engineering limits. Energy signatures that violated fundamental laws of physics. Casualty reports that suggested an entire pirate armada had been eliminated in less time than most species needed to brew their morning stimulants. Chancellor Zarakesh of the Hegemony Council called the session to order with trembling tentacles that betrayed her usually unflappable demeanor. Her crystalline voice, normally commanding enough to silence entire solar systems, cracked as she spoke. "Honored delegates, we face an unprecedented situation. Within the span of 96 standard hours, the Reaper Legion, a threat that has plagued civilized space for 5 decades, has been completely eliminated by an unknown military force. Our intelligence networks report that this force identifies itself as representing something called humanity or Earth." A ripple of nervous chittering swept through the chamber. The Reaper Legion had been more than just pirates. They had been a fact of life in the Outer Rim territories, as predictable and unavoidable as solar flares or asteroid impacts. Various galactic powers had tried to eliminate them over the years, usually resulting in devastating casualties and grudging acceptance that some problems were too big to solve. Until now. Senator Vorth of the Crystalline Confederation raised his geometric head, light refracting through his translucent skull in patterns that indicated extreme agitation. "Chancellor, our preliminary analysis suggests these humans deployed over 800 capital ships against the Reaper fleet. That level of military commitment implies either desperate stupidity or technological superiority that dwarfs our own capabilities, or both," muttered Counselor Grix from the back rows, earning a few nervous laughs that died quickly in the tense atmosphere. The chamber's main display activated, showing footage captured by long-range sensors during the engagement. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as human warships moved through space with the coordinated precision of a school of predatory fish, their weapons turning the infamous Reaper Armada into expanding clouds of superheated plasma. "By the void," whispered Trade Representative Clax, his insectoid mandibles clicking rapidly. "They're not just fighting, they're hunting. Look at those formation patterns there, systematically eliminating escape routes, forcing the Reapers into kill zones. This isn't random violence. This is orchestrated extermination." But here's the thing about intelligence reports. They always raise more questions than they answer. The chamber fell silent as Ambassador Yextel of the Neutral Worlds stood to address the assembly. Her species was known for their analytical minds and careful diplomatic language, which made her next words all the more chilling. "Delegates, I've reviewed the available data extensively. These humans didn't just defeat the Reaper Legion. They achieved total tactical superiority, using weapon systems that our best scientists can't fully explain. Their plasma cannon arrays generate energy outputs that should require industrial-scale fusion reactors, yet their ships move with the agility of interceptor craft. Their missile systems demonstrate artificial intelligence capabilities that exceed our most advanced computational matrices. She paused, letting the implications sink in. Either they've made technological breakthroughs that represent centuries of advancement beyond our current understanding, or they've been hiding their true capabilities for reasons we can't yet comprehend. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of concerned voices, speaking in dozens of different languages. Some delegates demanded immediate military mobilization. Others suggested diplomatic overtures. A few, the wisest among them, proposed simply staying as far away from human space as possible, and hoping these newcomers would remain content with their corner of the galaxy. That's when the holographic projector at the center of the chamber activated without authorization, causing every security system in the building to scream warnings. The image that materialized was of a human male in what appeared to be a military uniform, his face bearing scars that suggested extensive combat experience. "Honored delegates of the Galactic Council," the figure said, his voice carrying an authority that made the chamber fall silent instantly. "I am Admiral Marcus Thompson of the Terran Defense Force. I understand you've been discussing recent events in the Kepler system. The fact that humans had somehow bypassed the Council's most sophisticated security systems to insert themselves into a classified session sent waves of terror through the assembled representatives. If they could breach these defenses, what else might they be capable of?" Chancellor Zarakesh found her voice first. "Admiral Thompson, this is most irregular. The Galactic Council operates under strict protocols that apparently don't account for species that actually solve problems instead of debating them endlessly." Thompson interrupted with a slight smile that somehow managed to be more unsettling than an outright threat. "I'm here to clarify the situation and answer any questions you might have about Earth's intentions in this region." The silence stretched like a taut cable about to snap. Finally, Defense Minister Korth of the Military Alliance spoke up, his voice steady despite the circumstances. "Admiral, our intelligence reports suggest your species eliminated a 2,000-ship pirate fleet in less than 2 hours. That level of military capability raises ... concerns about your intentions toward established galactic powers." Thompson's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested he found the question mildly amusing. "Minister, Earth's Third Fleet now maintains regular patrols through the affected sectors. We've established protection zones around all civilian installations, trade routes, and peaceful settlements. Our intentions are exactly what they appear to be. We're the new neighborhood watch, and we take the job seriously." "But the methods," began Councillor Vex of the Altarian Republic, his tentacles trembling as he spoke. "Admiral, your response to the Reaper threat seems excessive for standard peacekeeping operations. Complete annihilation of enemy forces goes far beyond proportional response doctrines accepted by civilized species." Thompson's smile widened slightly, and every delegate in the chamber felt their survival instincts start screaming warnings. "Counselor, on Earth we have a saying, peace through superior firepower. When someone threatens innocent people under our protection, we don't send strongly worded letters or impose economic sanctions. We solve the problem permanently." Trade Representative Klax leaned forward in his seat, his compound eyes glittering with barely controlled panic. "But surely you understand the implications of such ... decisive ... responses. What happens when two parties both claim legitimate grievances? How do you determine which side deserves protection?" "That's simple," Thompson replied conversationally. "We protect the side that isn't enslaving children, harvesting sentient beings for food, or turning entire worlds into graveyards for profit. It's not a complicated moral calculation, even for a species that evolved on what you'd call a death world. The mention of Earth's classification sent another ripple of fear through the chamber. Class 12 death worlds were considered uninhabitable by galactic standards, planets where the environment itself was actively hostile to life. The fact that an intelligent species had not only survived on such a world, but had achieved interstellar travel suggested evolutionary pressures that most civilized beings couldn't even comprehend. "Any other questions?" Thompson asked, his tone remaining pleasant despite the underlying current of menace. Senator Vorth raised his crystalline head again, light patterns indicating extreme distress. "Admiral, what are Earth's long-term intentions? Do you plan to expand this protection zone to other regions?" Thompson's holographic image flickered slightly, and for a moment his expression grew serious. "Senator, that depends entirely on how quickly the galaxy adapts to the new reality. Earth doesn't seek conquest or domination. We have more than enough challenges managing our own space, but we also don't tolerate threats to innocent beings, regardless of which star system they call home." He paused, letting his words sink in. Pirates, slavers, genocidal empires, species that view other sentient beings as livestock, they're all on notice. The galaxy just got a lot smaller for predators who prey on the weak. The session dissolved into chaos as delegates began shouting questions, demands, and threats in their native languages. Some called for military mobilization against this human threat. Others suggested immediate diplomatic outreach. A few representatives simply gathered their belongings and left, apparently deciding that discretion was the better part of valor. Through it all, Admiral Thompson's holographic image remained steady, watching the proceedings with the patient air of someone who had expected exactly this reaction. "Delegates," he said finally, his voice somehow cutting through the cacophony without being raised, "the choice is yours. Earth offers protection to those who seek peace and justice. For those who profit from suffering, who build empires on the bones of innocence, who view other species as resources to be exploited, well, you've seen what happened to the Reapers." The image flickered and vanished, leaving the Galactic Council chamber in stunned silence. Outside in the corridors, emergency meetings were already beginning. Intelligence agencies scrambled to gather information about human capabilities. Military planners recalculated threat assessments and defense strategies. Diplomatic corps prepared formal contact protocols for a species that apparently didn't believe in traditional negotiation. But in the dark corners of the galaxy, in the hidden bases of pirate fleets and slaver operations, in the command centers of species that had built their power on the suffering of others, a different kind of meeting was taking place. For the first time in generations, the predators had something to fear, and they were about to discover that humans were very, very good at being feared. 6 months after the Reaper Legion ceased to exist, Commander Velox stood in his rebuilt command center and marveled at something he'd never thought possibly: completely empty threat board. The holographic display that had once flickered red with pirate alerts, slaver raids, and territorial disputes now glowed a peaceful green across 17 different star systems. The transformation had been swift and absolute. Within weeks of the human intervention, piracy in the sector hadn't just decreased, had vanished entirely. The Skull Nebula Raiders, who had terrorized freight convoys for 30 years, had simply disbanded and disappeared into the cosmic wind. Their leader, the infamous Captain Bloodaxe, had reportedly sold his fleet to a cargo hauling company and opened a small restaurant on a peaceful agricultural world. A restaurant, Velox muttered to himself, still struggling to process the absurdity of it all. The most feared pirate in 3 sectors is now serving lunch to farmers. But that wasn't even the strangest part of the new reality. The Crimson Tide Consortium, whose massive fleet had controlled illegal gambling and smuggling operations across dozens of worlds, had fled to distant arms of the galaxy without firing a single shot. Intelligence reports suggested they'd relocated to territories so remote that their hyperspace coordinates required scientific notation just to write them down. Even more incredible was the formal communication that had arrived just last week from the Black Star Syndicate, a criminal organization so notorious that most species didn't even speak their name aloud for fear of attracting their attention. The message, delivered through official diplomatic channels, was a masterpiece of terrified bureaucracy. To the honored representatives of Earth, it had read, "The Black Star Syndicate wishes to formally apologize for any activities that may have caused distress to beings under your protection. We are immediately ceasing all operations in human sectors and transitioning to legitimate business ventures. We have enclosed a complete list of our former victims and coordinates for reparation deliveries. Please find attached our new business plan for interstellar shipping and logistics. We look forward to serving the galactic community in a peaceful and lawful manner." The message had been signed by 47 different crime bosses, each signature accompanied by what appeared to be a blood sample for DNA verification. Apparently, they wanted to make absolutely certain that humanity understood they were sincere about their career change. Vilox moved to his observation deck, gazing out at the bustling activity around Kepler Station. Construction ships swarmed like mechanical bees, rebuilding what the Reapers had destroyed and adding new defensive installations that incorporated human engineering principles. Trade vessels moved through the system in steady streams, their captains no longer requiring armed escorts or hazard pay for traveling through what had once been considered a death trap. But it was the patrol ships that truly captured his attention. Sleek human vessels moved through their routes with the lazy confidence of apex predators in their own territory. Their names were painted on their hulls in bold letters that somehow managed to be both beautiful and terrifying. U.S. Retribution, U.S. Judgment, U.S. Final Answer, U.S. No More Chances. Each ship was a work of art in applied destruction. Their weapon arrays, hidden behind elegant armor plating that suggested power held in careful reserve. The human crews were polite, professional, and absolutely terrifying in their casual competence. They responded to distress calls with the efficiency of emergency medical teams, arriving exactly when needed and solving problems with surgical precision. A malfunctioning reactor here, a navigation system failure there, a minor dispute between trading partners, all handled with the same calm expertise that had annihilated the galaxy's most feared pirate fleet. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted his thoughts. "The monthly patrol report is ready for your review." Vilox accepted the datapad and scanned through statistics that would have seemed impossible just months ago. Pirate activity, 0. Incidents. Civilian casualties from criminal actions, 0. Trade route disruptions, 0. Insurance claims for theft or destruction, 0. But here's what really made his hands tremble as he read. The human patrol fleet represented only a tiny fraction of Earth's actual military capability. During his visit to Admiral Stone's flagship, he'd glimpsed classified reports that mentioned something called the Home Fleet, apparently. The 800 ships that had destroyed the Reapers were considered a minor expeditionary force. The real Earth military, the forces that protected humanity's home systems, were described in terms that his translators struggled to process. Thousands of ships, he whispered to himself. Tens of thousands. And they call what we saw a light patrol force? The implications were staggering. If the humans had deployed what they considered a minor military asset and reshaped the balance of power across multiple sectors, what would happen if they ever decided to take a serious interest in galactic affairs? He turned to his personal terminal and began composing his final report on the human intervention, knowing that his words would be read by intelligence agencies and military planners across the galaxy. The humans answered our call for help and delivered something we never dared hope for, absolute security, he wrote, his violet fingers moving slowly across the keys. They patrol our trade routes with ships that bear names like poetry written in the language of war. Pirates no longer threaten our sector. Slavers have vanished like shadows before the dawn. Criminal organizations that once operated with impunity now send formal apologies and beg for forgiveness. He paused, staring out at the peaceful stars, before continuing. But I fear we may have unleashed something terrifying upon the galaxy. The humans are protectors, yes, guardians who have given us safety beyond our wildest dreams, but they are also the ultimate predators, beings who wage war with the efficiency of machines and the ruthlessness of natural selection itself. They don't just defeat their enemies, they redefine the very concept of what it means to be defeated. The truth was, Velox had done some research on human history during the past months. What he'd discovered had cost him several nights of sleep and left him questioning everything he thought he knew about the nature of civilization. Humans had fought wars that lasted decades. They had developed weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets, then chosen not to use them out of something they called moral restraint. Their military doctrine included concepts like acceptable losses and collateral damage that suggested a comfort with violence that most species couldn't even comprehend, and yet, they had also produced art that could move beings to tears, music that could touch souls across species barriers, and literature that explored the deepest questions of existence with profound wisdom. The galaxy is safer now, he continued typing. Trade flows freely, families sleep peacefully, children play without fear of being stolen by slavers or murdered by raiders. But it is also forever changed. We have learned that there exists a species that views the protection of innocence as a sacred duty, and the violation of that duty as an unforgivable sin. He looked up from his report as his communications officer announced an incoming transmission from the human patrol ship *UES, Nemesis*. Admiral Stone's face appeared on his screen. Her expression is calm and professional, as always. "Commander Velox," she said with a slight smile, "I wanted to personally thank you for the kind words in your monthly reports. Earth appreciates the cooperation we've received from local authorities." Admiral Velox replied, still awed by the casual authority these humans projected. "It is we who should be thanking you. The transformation of our region has been ... miraculous." Stone's expression grew slightly more serious. "Commander, I want you to understand something. What you've seen here, what we've accomplished in your sector, this is just the beginning. Earth has decided that the galaxy needs better management, and we're very good at management." The words sent a chill down Velox's spine. "Admiral, what do you mean by better management?" "We're receiving distress calls from 17 different species across multiple galactic arms," Stone explained matter-of-factly. "Pirate activity, genocidal campaigns, slave markets, territorial disputes that have been killing millions. The Galactic Council has spent centuries debating these problems. We prefer more direct solutions." She gestured to something off-screen, and Velox caught a glimpse of tactical displays showing human fleet movements across vast distances. "The good news is that most criminals are learning quickly. The Vorthan Empire has agreed to cease their expansion campaigns. The Helix Cartel has voluntarily disbanded their slave operations. The war between the Northern Alliance and the Crystal Hegemony ended yesterday, when both sides received our offer to mediate." "And if they had refused your mediation?" Velox asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Stone's smile returned, cold as the space between stars. "Commander, on Earth we have another saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. The galaxy is learning that we carry a very, very big stick." The transmission ended, leaving Velox alone with his thoughts and his half-finished report. He returned to his writing, adding a final paragraph that he hoped would serve as both warning and wisdom for anyone who might read his words. "God help anyone who threatens what humanity has chosen to protect." But more than that, God help anyone who forces them to demonstrate the full extent of their capabilities. We have seen only the gentlest touch of their power, and it was enough to reshape our entire region. I pray we never learn what happens when Earth decides to stop being polite. Outside his window, the UES Final Answer glided past on its patrol route, its crew probably discussing shift schedules and maintenance reports as they casually maintained peace across a dozen star systems. The sight should have been comforting. Instead, Velox found himself wondering what other species might be composing similar reports in distant corners of the galaxy, all trying to comprehend the same fundamental truth that had changed everything. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and it was absolutely, terrifyingly effective at keeping the peace. The age of pirates and slavers and casual cruelty was ending. The age of human protection had begun. Whether the galaxy was ready for it or not, the end